Did you own a Wii U?
No.
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 Hey everybody, it's Matt here, and recently you may have seen a video on this channel talking about some of the positives of the Wii U, because there's so many negative videos about the Wii U out there and so much negative discussion online that I thought that it would be great to do a video talking about the positives. But today, things are going to be a little bit different. We are going to talk about some of the negatives surrounding the Wii U, because look, we can't dance around it. You've heard it before, but it does bear repeating to a certain extent. The Wii U did fail, objectively. But it did fail everybody, alright? And again, there were some good things, there were some bad things. We talked about that, the good things specifically in the Wii U positives video, like I said earlier, that we did recently. But still, even in that video, there were some things that I had to bring up as some negatives to either just kind of prop up the positives or even just pull a little bit away from the positive, just because you had to talk about the context of it. So in this case, I thought, not that we're just ripping it to shreds, we're just talking about why the Wii U either personally failed us, why it didn't do well objectively, depending on who I brought on, because I brought a few different people on from Those Guys Play to talk about it. Although not everyone in the opener is going to be in this video, because some of them just straight up didn't have a Wii U. So still, either way, though, we're going to jump to some of them right now.
So the Wii U failed me personally because, well, by the time I finally said, you know what, I'm gonna buy one, I'm gonna do it, its life cycle ended. And they're like, hey, we're not making anything else. I think some of my friends had said, hey, don't get it now. I'm like, why not? I'm finally ready to. They're like, yeah, but it's done. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Now, I know I usually, like, me personally, I buy consoles at the end of their life cycle just because I can't drop it, you know, at the very beginning. It usually like it to come down a little bit. But I was like, it hasn't been that long. And they're like, yeah, no, it's dead. And I'm like, well, okay. Also, towards the beginning, I don't know. I guess it was. I wouldn't have traded in my Wii to help get the new generation, to get the Wii U, because my Wii could still play my GameCube games, and I still have my GameCube too, but I ended up using my Wii to play GameCube games a lot too, so that was another one. And GameCube was really big for me, so I constantly was returning to GameCube games. So that wasn't going to happen. And then I guess one of the biggest things was a lot of my friends were getting most of the games that I would have played for the Wii U as well. So there was never really any huge pressure. You know, I could play it when I was over at my friends. So there was never really any huge pressure for me to be like, oh, I need to get this so I can play it. I'm like, nah, I can play it whenever. Like, I could play it on the weekend together with my friends. So yeah, it's kind of 3 strikes you're out kind of situation, I guess.
Hey, so I'm back talking about some of the negatives of the Wii U again because I own one. So right off the bat, I do want to mention something about the gamepad. It's really nice. I mentioned that in comparison to the Switch, that it feels better on the hands. But the device itself puts you into a position where, God forbid something happens to it in terms of damage or scratches on the screen, you're really out of luck. And it puts you in a tough spot because you really do need the gamepad to be able to play. And it's not a great situation where there's a crack on the screen or some damage to it versus something, let's say the Switch, again, which is an easy comparison. The controllers do have a lot more support when it comes to fixing them versus the gamepad that we have for the Wii U. Now, it also can't go without mentioning the fact that you can't really get new games for this now because the eShop shut down. Obviously, this can happen anywhere, anytime that we're using a console that is outdated compared to where we are, but it's a little hard to think about somebody rushing to go to the Wii U just because of something they might have had in the past that they might not be able to access anymore. Now, the setup of the Wii U also, because of the fact that the gamepad can use a sensor on the TV and all that, can also be a hassle. Now, this is compared to something like the Wii itself, it may not seem like a problem. But in comparison to something like the Switch, in terms of just plug and play, it's a lot easier and a lot more intuitive for the gamer on the go versus the Wii U, where you do have to have a lot set in and plugged in at all times to be able to do so.
Oh, that Wii U. So let's talk about some of my issues. So first things first, this gamepad. Look at this gamepad. Now, I want to mention, if some of you didn't see that positive video, I somewhat recently got into the Wii U. So when it comes to this gamepad and this Wii U, got them both from Anthony, and I tried to get a Wii U online, but the gamepad was broken. I thought that there was a chance I could replace the digitizer, and boy, was I wrong. Which, by the way, is another issue with this gamepad, is that it is so difficult to repair. Now, am I the kind of person who is very good at repairs? No. So don't think that I'm saying this based on my own experience, but looking at this thing on the inside and then seeing people talk about it online, how difficult the gamepad was to repair, that definitely is a problem, because the gamepad, if you don't know, was both a screen and a controller. Now, yes, you could use other controllers if the gamepad broke, but here's the problem. When it comes to different settings and other things about the Wii U, or just, actually I should clarify, with any gaming console in general that has some kind of gimmick, the company's going to want to get you familiar with that gimmick. So with the Wii, even if you want to play, let's say, GameCube games, you still have to use the actual motion controls to get to the GameCube games, because again, they want you to be familiar with that gimmick. Perfectly fine. But with the Wii U, when it comes to things like settings, parental locks, stuff like that, if your gamepad is broken, you can't access them, because it doesn't go to the screen. No matter what button you press, it will always be on the gamepad. So let's say you want to sync up a gamepad or sync up a Wiimote and your gamepad is broken, can't do it, because all of the little kind of symbols that have to be matched up, you just couldn't see them if the gamepad was broken. Yeah. Now, I did mention a positive last time about the gamepad, that you could, obviously play, let's say, your retro games on the gamepad if someone's using the TV. However, it doesn't actually hold any data. It isn't like the Switch. So you can't just take the gamepad to a completely different part of your house. Thankfully, I have an apartment, so it does extend to half of the apartment, if need be, but it doesn't go all the way, so meaning that, yeah, it is going to disconnect and you basically just can't play the game. You can still record the gameplay, because it's actually, if need be, it's mirrored on the screen as well. So you can still use the screen to do other things, but let's say if you have a capture device or something, you can record it on your television with your actual console and still use the gamepad in another part of the house. I think that part is cool, but again, the reach is not good enough, and there's a reason why people online, I'm sure it's an overused line for you at this point, but there's a reason why people use the words like prototype Switch to describe the Wii U, specifically the gamepad, because yes, being able to just kind of pop the Switch out of the dock and just walk around with it, to me, even to this day, the fact that we had a Switch for 5 years, doesn't matter, it still is mind-blowing to me. Oh, and by the way, still talking about that gamepad, so in 2013, YouTube and Twitch was nothing like we know it to be today. But that doesn't mean that YouTube was a spring chicken like it was in 06 or 07. You still had companies wanting people to market their stuff on YouTube. And at the end of the day, while no company sends us products or anything like that, we've never been paid to do some kind of review or cover a video or cover a game or anything like that in a video. Let's Play, none of that, right? At the same time, though, we do have to acknowledge that when I talk about, or any of us talk about or play a game, we are putting that out there to an audience. No matter how small or large it is, you're still putting that out there, you're still talking about it, you're still getting all of that out there. So I say this just to mention the fact that it is absurd that in 2013, Nintendo basically locked out half of its marketing in terms of games, how you can record games and discuss games online using YouTube, using other social media. They just locked it straight up, because half of your game, be it, let's say, menus or maps or whatever, depending on how the company that created the game actually utilizes the gamepad, half of it is just stuck on the gamepad. Now, you can switch it to your television, to your main screen, so you can flip it on and off to record if you need to, record footage or whatnot. But at the same time, though, it's still being locked behind this gamepad. You will never have, if you're using official hardware, the full game recorded unless you were somehow able to snag from, I believe it was Katsukitty back in the day. Sadly, they've since shut down because of some laws changing in Japan regarding modding consoles. But when they were active, they were actually selling Wii U gamepads with HDMI out mods, which is pretty cool and sounds a little silly to some people, I'm sure, but very cool to see because, yeah, when you're trying to record this footage for an audience, now it would be super dated, I'm sure, especially with how good Wii U emulation is. But at the time, completely absurd to potentially, not just for people who needed that, working in magazines and whatnot. I'm sure they were sent some kind of mocked up Wii U like dev kit type thing. But for anyone who is just an average person on the YouTube trying to show off this footage to friends and anyone else, it is just absurd that they would lock it out that late in the game. That's some stuff that you would think would happen, a decade prior, 5 years prior. 2013, that's less than 10 years ago. But you know what? Everything about the gamepad could have been forgiven. Maybe not everything. Mostly everything could have been forgiven if Nintendo had sold it separately. But for some odd reason, they didn't. A console that is primarily marketed to children, sorry everyone else, my age and older, for some reason had a controller with a screen that, if broken, could fundamentally destroy gameplay, make it inaccessible, and no way to buy it separately. To be fair, eventually Nintendo was looking into selling the gamepad separately. I believe that in Japan they did for a bit, but worldwide, they just didn't. Not even from the get-go. You would think they sell controllers for, third-party controllers even, but this was the one controller / screen that you don't really have third-party alternatives for. You just have Nintendo, and they're not even selling it separately. I cannot imagine being a parent that doesn't know much about gaming, having a child that broke this controller, trying to get it repaired, and basically being told, yeah, we don't really do that here. And then looking at Nintendo, I don't know if they had offered repairs, to be fair. I imagine they would not have been free. So when it comes to trying to get the console to work again, assuming that you don't have a Wii mode or anything like that, you have to actually straight up buy a new console. Wonder why this didn't do so well. But you know what? Enough about the gamepad. Also, yes, I took off my leather jacket. It's getting pretty hot in here. I'm getting fired up talking about that gamepad. But you know what? Let's move off it for a little bit to talk about the Virtual Console. Now, this is the little baby that none of us could ever say anything about because it's so good and it's so sweet and it's so innocent. How could you badmouth a baby? Well, I'm about to do it. No, I'm not going to badmouth the Virtual Console. Do not immediately jump to the comments, please. But what I do want to say, though, is that we do have to talk about, and I'm sure you've heard about this before, just the weird darkening of every game on the Virtual Console. I am happy if they remove some things that could potentially cause like seizures and whatnot in different video games, but I don't know what their policy was and why every single game I play on the Virtual Console is just dark. So a little bit confused there, not really too sure what's going on there and why that is what it is. However, in general though, yes, some people will say that there wasn't enough N64 games, but honestly I'll actually say that when it comes to developing something as an emulator officially, you might think that, oh, well, there's emulators on the PC. All you have to do is just develop the emulator, then you'll be fine for life. But the way that the consoles work over time for any company's console changes. And that would mean that the emulator would also have to change to a certain extent. Now, Microsoft has definitely been playing the long game with their Xbox One series of consoles when it comes to backwards compatibility. But looking at something like the Virtual Console, it definitely is, especially with the fact that they were charging for it versus with Nintendo Switch Online where they're charging a general kind of blanket fee. So I think that they're a bit more comfortable putting out something that might not be as good as first that they can then patch later. But when it comes to the Wii U Virtual Console, I think there would have been a lot more of an uproar if every single N64 game had issues that you were paying $10 a pop for. So it isn't just as easy as saying, oh, the company owns the rights to this game, that, you know, and they also own the console. They can just kind of throw it on there all willy-nilly. I'll oddly, in this negative video about the Wii U, defend the fact that even though it does suck that there weren't as many N64 games on the Wii U, it is costly to try to make sure that every game that they do put on the Wii U Virtual Console is compatible. So I get it. It sucks, but I get it. But what I don't get is how little memory, how little storage was on the Wii U. Why? Why? Look at this. They expected this to last them more than 5 years. It's a blessing in a way that the Wii U failed as hard as it did, because this wasn't going to get them anywhere at all. So I know that Tristan mentioned that the GameCube was not backwards compatible with the Wii U, but I do want to expand on that just a bit. Imagine you buy a Wii, the original Wii, and maybe you're kind of mixed on the Wii, but at the very least, you love the GameCube, or you want to get into the GameCube more. So the GameCube is now less expensive. At least some of the games, a fair amount of the games at the time, are less expensive, especially compared to right now. So you're getting those games for your Wii, and maybe you don't have too many, but you're kind of a bit on board with it. And just because you have a Wii doesn't mean that you have all these Wii games, especially with a virtual console that did exist on the original Wii. And you hear that the Wii U is coming out, and all of those GameCube games you have are just not compatible on that Wii U. Are you gonna buy it? Are ya? Heck, even if you love the Wii, a lot of people actually sell their consoles to get new consoles. So how many people do you think sold their Wii, including their nunchuck and Wiimote, got a Wii U, and looked at it and saw that yes, your Wii games are compatible with the Wii U, but you're gonna need that nunchuck, you're gonna need that Wiimote. So while it is backwards compatible, is it really backwards compatible? Sure, you do need a GameCube controller to play GameCube games on the Wii, but even third-party controllers will work. But I don't believe there's that many, or if any, third-party Wiimotes out there. Nunchucks, yes, but the Wiimote, I don't believe so. So there's one thing I want to briefly touch on, and it's the Wii U's branding. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's still something that you do have to mention from time to time. There are so many people out there that thought that the Wii U was just an accessory for the Wii, that the gamepad was actually the Wii U, quote unquote. And it really goes to show how important marketing is. I'm going to talk about marketing a little bit more later, but just talking about the name Wii U. When you look at the NES and the Super NES, it's not the NES 2, but at the very least you know, okay, this one is better than its predecessor. Nintendo 64, not SNES 3, not the Ultra NES or anything like that, but you still know that it is more 64 bits, more than its predecessor. Things got a little weird with the GameCube and the Wii, I'll admit, but still, when you look at naming conventions, let's say for the PlayStation, right, very simple, very easy to understand, PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4. Xbox, things gets weird, and I don't really like the Xbox naming conventions, to be quite frank with you. But still, you do know that they are different from one another. You're not going to get the original Xbox confused with the 360. You might with the Xbox One. Again, not a big fan of the name, but still, it's way different, I feel, than the Wii and Wii U. It's a different name enough, and it's so close to each other. They didn't have that 360 in the middle there. They didn't have, you know, the Wii 240p or something like that. And because it came with its own gimmick, it made some people believe that that was the Wii U. And there's so many accessories that came out for the Wii that, let's just be real, how can you blame those people? Because I personally can't. When you look at how many interesting and unique and weird accessories came out, first party and third party, for the Wii, I think it's easy to see why some people would actually just want the gamepad and think that that is the Wii U, instead of the whole dang console. So here is my last issue with the Wii U. So in the positives video, I talked about the fact that I thought that there was a good amount of first-party games, third-party games, indie games, and virtual console games, but looking at the first-party games in particular, looking at the marketing, after the initial marketing, looking at the way the console was even designed, I just feel like Nintendo didn't really put a lot of support into the console. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, that's the biggest reason why it failed. I've already talked about why I think some of the bigger reasons why I think this thing failed, but just talking about the fact that I don't know anyone who owned a Wii U for the most part, anyone who really talked highly about the Wii U. I just feel like they thought, if people are going to buy Wiis, then great, and if people are going to buy Wii U's, even better, but they didn't really put as much marketing, as much of attention into the Wii U as they did with the Switch, because I know that the Switch had kind of a rocky start, but at this point, even I would say year 2 and year 3, they were really into the Switch and putting their first foot forward with the Switch and with first-party titles on the Switch. I know, again, the first year was pretty rocky, but as it went on, they really put a lot of stuff on the Switch. And when you look at the Wii U, I don't know, there's something about it that feels like even Nintendo themselves didn't believe in it the way they did with the Wii. Maybe you disagree with me on that. If you do, please comment down below. I'm not saying that, Nintendo wanted this thing to fail or anything like that. No, nothing conspiratorial or anything like that. Just when looking at the Wii and looking at the Switch, not just because of how well they sold, but just so many other factors involving how many games are on there, how they were marketed, what kind of games, things like that. It feels like early on they realized, uh-oh, the Wii U's not doing well, and it became a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, and then they ended up going, you know what, let's look towards the next thing early on in its life cycle because it wasn't doing well. And that's why within freaking 5 years, we ended up having the Nintendo Switch, the quote-unquote next gen for the Nintendo brand of consoles. But either way, those were our negative opinions on the Wii U. Do you have any? I'm sure you probably do. So if you do, and also positives as well, please comment them down below. Be respectful if you can, but still would love to hear you down in the comment section down below. Love you all, take care, and tune in next time. So, see ya!